Welcome to the Bioptimizers Awesome Health Podcast. And now here's your host, Wade T. Lightheart.
What if you could double your energy naturally without caffeine or stimulants in just 3 short months? It's not only possible, you can transform every aspect of your health if you follow the 12-week blueprint we've created for you in the Awesome Health System. The Awesome Health System is a free course where you receive a daily video lesson spanning the most cutting-edge secrets for air, water, exercise, sunshine, optimizers, mindset, and education. It's something most companies would charge hundreds of dollars for, yet you get it for free when you go to bioptimizers.com. To access your course, register to download the PDF report called 3 Phases of Bioptimization, which gets you access to the report and daily access to the first lesson in the 12-week, 84-day Awesome Health course. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. I'm Wade T. Lightheart from Bioptimizers with another edition of the Awesome Health Podcast. And today we're going to talk about how to turn stress into your superpower. And joining us today is Trudy Stone, who is a certified culinary nutritionist, TV guest, wellness expert, author, podcast host, and founder of the Trudy Stone Nutrition, who educates people about nutrition solutions for managing stress and anxiety. From healthy habits to brain health, Trudy is passionate about empowering people to build healthier habits and unlock the power of food to build a strong and vibrant brain and body. Trudy is also the creator of the RISE method, a step-by-step framework to help people to overcome stress, overwhelm, and fatigue. And she joins us today from the great province of Ontario, Canada, where I was born. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Wade.
Well, hey, so we share a couple of common elements. We're both from the great province of Canada in Ontario. It's fall, it's coming a nice time of year. So tell me a little bit about your journey that got you so passionate about healthy eating and becoming a nutritionist for so many people.
Well, it was quite a long and windy road. Some tears were shed along the way, I won't lie.
Yes, indeed.
But I often start away with, saying, who knew that a visit to the bathroom could be so transformational? And then people are like, what does that even mean? Well, I was working in the corporate world for many, many years. And while I was at work one day, I went to the bathroom for a break. And as I was heading in, I just got out of a meeting. And then as I was heading into the bathroom, when you start like striking up like a chat with one of your coworkers after you just got out of the meeting and now you're going into the bathroom. Anyways, we're chatting back and forth, having one of those awkward washroom chats. And as we were chatting through the stalls, I noticed I had a bit of a tough time like buttoning up my button on my pants. And then that was when the most embarrassing thing happened and the button popped off and it flew right into the stall next to me where my coworker was. I was completely and utterly mortified. And I was also wondering, how am I going to bribe my coworker not to share this story at the water cooler? And how am I going to keep my pants up for the rest of the day? That was the other thing as well. So, after that, sheepishly grabbed my little button in the bathroom stall next to me, went back to my desk. And I said to myself, you know what, Trudy, I'm not buying bigger pants this time, because that's what I would always do whenever my weight would change. I would buy bigger pants or I'd buy stretchy pants. And a lot of women can relate to this. But I decided right then and there that I wasn't going to be buying bigger pants. I was going to stop blaming my dryer for shrinking my pants yet again. And I was going to lose weight this time for good, because I had a very complicated history at that point with dieting. I'm sure a lot of women and men too can relate to this. Like you lose weight, you gain it back, lose it, gain it back. Sometimes you often lose weight because you're going to the beach or you're going to a wedding or you're going to see somebody you haven't saw in a long time. So I started pouring over lots of different research studies. I'm a bit of a research nerd. I love studying research, studied a lot of different studies and experts, anything from, Harvard University to the Institute of Psychology of Eating, Journal of the American Association, all these different studies. And I started to implement what I learned on myself. And to my surprise, I ended up losing 30 pounds. And I didn't know this at the time, but a lot of the things that I had developed, a lot of the tips and the strategies I developed, they actually became lifestyle habits. And many of the habits I still follow to this day. And I actually wrote a book about it, which is behind me here on the shelf. But, after I lost weight, I wanted other people to know about the importance of the brain and body connection with living healthier, and how habits can really create a healthy lifestyle and just a whole lot easier without a lot of the struggle, without having to rely on willpower, without having to constantly be on a diet. And in fact, that was the very last diet I went on, and that was 8 years ago. So this is what, caused me to kind of go into the nutrition industry, study nutrition, and then just wanting to help people. It was, out of what had happened to me with my story, it was everything that I was seeing in the weight loss industry. A lot of the things like foods women were eating and things they were doing that was actually making their situation worse, and just wanting to give back and just wanting a lot of women to have the information that I didn't have when I was on my journey to eat healthier.
So how would you classify the difference between a diet and a lifestyle?
Diet is restriction. Lifestyle is something where it's almost like it's just like on autopilot. You don't have to think about it. You don't feel deprived. You don't have this immense struggle with food. And for me, all foods can fit. I'm not going to restrict entire food groups like carbs. That's not me. And if anybody out there is doing that, hey, that's on you. I'm not going to knock you for it, but I don't believe in restricting food groups. I think when we start restricting certain foods or start restricting certain food groups, it starts to establish a really unhealthy relationship with food, which then establishes a really unhealthy relationship with yourself.
So going into that, I think this is a really important topic, and about the psychological and emotional connection that food has, and our kind of self-view when we try and take on these restrictive diets, oftentimes because we have a button incident and of some sort, and we go hyper restrictive, and then that's not sustainable, and then we go off it, and then we start then questioning ourselves and our capabilities. And then, we find a GP that says, wow, your genetics, or I'm big boned, or everybody in my family's heavy, or we eat it, blah, blah, blah. Like the rationalizations actually come from an emotional point. How did you take your research and start seeing that connection, what the psychological literature was sharing about diet strategies versus lifestyles?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, because I also think, Wade, it goes back to like, what is your history with health? And for me, the reason why I was on all these diets all the time, but losing weight and gaining it back, was because of how I grew up. And I was bullied when I was younger, and I was overweight, and I was constantly bullied. I was constantly made fun of. And that stuck with me, I think, as I got older, when I became a teenager, definitely when I became an adult. So for me and my personal weight loss struggle and my struggle to eat healthier, I think a lot of it had its roots in what had happened to me, as a child. But then also just when I was on my journey, with losing weight, it kind of transformed at some point from just wanting to lose weight and seeing a number on the scale to really becoming the person that I'd always wanted to be. And then also establishing other habits that didn't have to do with the number on the scale. Like, for example, like managing stress. I know we're going to talk about that today, really developing a stress management habit to help me to get through a lot of those stressful times. Because what a lot of people don't realize out there is that our thoughts are so connected to our body and ultimately to the results that we get or we don't get in life. Like when we have a thought, whether it's usually a negative thought, because most of us have a lot of negative thoughts per day. I think over something like 80,000 negative thoughts a day. When you have a thought, that leads to a certain feeling. And then when you have a feeling, that leads to a reaction. And for me, I deal with a lot of women and work with a lot of women who turn to food to actually soothe their emotions and turn to food for comfort. And specifically, even with emotional eating or even overeating, a lot of it has to do at first with, there's a lot of underlying factors there for sure, psychological factors, but I think a lot of it has to do with the thoughts that we think, those thoughts that we have about ourselves, how we kind of perceive ourselves and perceive our bodies. And I would say to anybody out there, even if you're trying to lose weight right now, you're never going to be successful if you're hating yourself the way that you are right now. If you want to make any sort of changes in your life, it starts with loving yourself exactly how you are right now, even if you're not exactly where it is that you want to be.
I think that's a very powerful message. Maybe you can share with the listeners here specifically what that journey was like for you, and how does that maybe connect to your book and also to your message to your clients?
Yeah, it was really like learning, and I know it's going to sound cheesy, but it really came down to loving myself more. And at that time when I was losing weight, like like I said, some things started to shift for me, and I started to just delve a lot more into personal development. And I would say, like, one of the people, and she's a phenomenal motivational speaker, one of the people that really was instrumental in helping me to work on my mindset and strengthen my mindset as well as my body was Lisa Nichols. I don't know if you've heard of her, but she's a phenomenal motivational speaker. And when I was working in the corporate industry, she had come to our office to speak. And, she talked about like self-love and like loving yourself, like no matter what. And all of those things were foreign to me at the time because we are so hard on ourselves. And especially as women, we constantly beat ourselves down and say things to ourselves that we would never say to a friend. Right. And also when we're trying to eat healthier, like a lot of the times we think about all the things that aren't going right rather than the things that are going right. So let's say you're trying to make changes to your health. Like, maybe you never drank water before. Maybe you just always drank soda, but now you find yourself, okay, you're drinking maybe a couple more glasses of water a day and a couple less, sodas a day. Celebrate that. Don't think to yourself, oh my God, I said I was going to quit soda and here I am. I'm still drinking the soda. No, but you're drinking less soda this week than you were last week. So you need to celebrate yourself. Like we need to celebrate these small wins along the way because that's what gives you that momentum. That's what gives you that motivation. And that's one thing I keep getting asked all the time is, how do I stay motivated to eat healthier? How do I stay motivated to live healthier? And it's celebrating every single small win along the way. And, these are all the reasons why I decided to write my book called Unbreakable, which is all about, eating healthier and living a healthier lifestyle without willpower. Because I really wanted people to understand, get off the dieting roller coaster, because again, it's perpetuating an unhealthy relationship with yourself. But B, like when it comes to living healthier, it's not just about the number on the scale. There's so many other things that are important to longevity and living healthier. Like, again, in the book, I talk about stress management, and in the book, I talk about your environment. So it's your physical environment, like the foods you have in your house, right? Like maybe you have cookies on your counter all the time. I know I did. And I could talk about that in the book. So I got rid of the cookies on the counter because they were in plain sight. So I ate them. But your environment is also the people that you surround yourself with. And a lot of people don't think about that. A lot of times it can be like crabs in a bucket. Like you want to eat healthier, you want to live healthier, but then you have these people around you like, oh, just have another drink. Oh yeah, you can have the cake. Like, don't worry about it. It's Saturday night. You can have the cake. So when we think about environment, like a lot of people think about physical environment, and yes, that's important. We need to have those foods in our house that are going to build health rather than building disease. But we also need to be really mindful of the people that we surround ourselves with, and surrounding yourself with people who are in line with the person that you want to be. Surrounding yourself with the people who are in line with the goals that you have for your life that you want to fulfill.
It's really, really powerful. And one of my spiritual teachers, the very first lesson in his course is environment is stronger than will, and setting yourself up with the right winning environment. And that can be very disruptive for people. And sometimes, and I want to tie this into stress and how your environment can be a source of stress, or how you show up in a new environment particularly may be a source of stress with the subconscious expectations on yourself. And so can you talk about how that stress can be turned into a superpower? Because obviously you were able to do that, and there was probably some very fearful moments that you experienced along the way, and maybe you can give some examples of what you or your clients do in order to turn stress into a superpower.
Yeah, for me, Wade, stress actually became one of my biggest assets rather than something that crippled me. And it can be for other people too, if you learn to lean into it. And so, for example, for me, like how this all kind of started was when I was working in the corporate world. So now we're fast forwarding after I, lost the weight, whatever, great. I was in the corporate world and I had a boss that was never satisfied with my work. Although everybody else on the team was satisfied with my work, and I worked with a team of 50 people, everybody else had a great relationship with them. But for her, for some reason, she just was never satisfied with anything that I did. And one day she provided me with yet more criticism. And, rather than getting stressed, because my ultimate response would always be to go into the bathroom stall and lock myself. Man, I have a complicated relationship with bathroom stalls. I just realized that. But my response would always be to go into the bathroom stall and like cry or just kind of just give myself a moment, right? So that day I actually went for a walk. So I went for a walk that day, and rather than just getting really stressed and anxious and frustrated about it, I paused and I asked myself, Trudy, what is it that you can learn from this moment? And what is it that you need right now in this moment? And in that moment, actually, what happened was gratitude washed over me because I realized that my boss had actually given me yet another reason to leave that job, which is then what ultimately led to what I do now for a living, which is helping others to live healthier. So, here's the thing. You'll do yourself an enormous favor if you take control of how you're framing your life and make stress work for you rather than against you. Because I could have gone home that day. I could have pounded bad glasses of wine, but I said, no, I'm going to ask myself some questions here. Because when we stop and ask ourselves some questions, that's when we can start getting into solution mode. And a lot of the frustrations that we endure in life, a lot of the challenges that we endure in life, they can be seen as blessings because they urge us to grow and to develop.
Yeah, opportunity is often this is disguised as adversity. And we live really cushy lives relative to humans throughout existence. And I would like to just go down a little bit further on stress and its response, classically determined as the Seeley response, but there are various versions. And so many people say, I'm so stressed or this or whatever. Can you talk about how maybe the physiological components of stress can be negative towards one's health?
Yeah,
and
for
then
sure.
maybe and then maybe how stress also, because you see these like people live these really high stressful lives and work really hard and like they have robust levels of health and you're like, what? Like, how is it like, is it the stress or is it the response to stress?
Yeah, that's such a great question, Wade. What I really want people to take away from this is this, like, nobody's going to be free of stress. It is always going to be there, but you can master the way that you react to it and rise above it so that it no longer has this immense sense of control over you. So knowing all the different ways that stress affects our bodies, which I'm going to talk about in a second, this is why I developed my 4-step rise system that I use with my clients to help them to rise above stress. And this is what I'm going to share here today. But before I do that, there's I would say at least 17 different conditions, probably even more, that we can link to excess stress. But some of the key ones would be memory. And this is what I'm seeing a lot with my clients as well. So when we're under severe amounts of stress, it negatively affects our brain, specifically the part of the brain called the hippocampus, which is responsible for memory and learning. This is why I have a picture of the brain on my shelf behind me. It's a constant reminder to always take care of my brain, to always take care of my mental health. So that's one. Cravings for sugar and fat, right? And this is because our hormones get completely out of whack, right? And then there's belly fat. And a lot of women aren't going to want to hear this, but there's belly fat. And this is because of increased cortisol levels in our body. But I think the one that concerns me the most, and I know you talk about this as well a lot, Wade, is blood sugar. Because during stressful times, hormones like adrenaline and cortisol, they cause our blood sugar levels to rise. And then this puts us at risk for, diseases like diabetes, for example. So those are just some of the ways that stress negatively affects our bodies, and digestion too, because when we're stressed out, it completely shuts down our digestion, because now your body is, saying, okay, well, digestion's not really that important because she's in an emergency state. So we're going to prioritize other different things here.
And what are some of the positive aspects when you use some of these things as far as related to your diet, when you do switch how you represent stress in your body? What typically happens with your clients or in your own experience?
Oh, they feel more calm. They feel more joyful. They feel more resilient. They feel more capable, and they just feel in control. Because I think when we're in these stressful periods, we just feel like everything is unraveling around us. Everything is completely out of control and is falling off of the rails. So when you really take that time to start developing a stress management habit, you start to feel a lot more resilient. You start to feel more capable. Again, you start to feel more resilient. And I think a lot of people, we're always waiting for something. We're waiting to be happier. We're waiting for that big vacation that's going to help us to de-stress. We're waiting to feel our toes in the sand, and sitting under the umbrella to de-stress. But we need to build these moments of relieving stress throughout our day. It is super important to make sure that we stay on top of our health.
So, what are some of the things that you outline in your book, Unbreakable, and how that relates to maybe someone who is feeling stress or struggling with their diet or is looking for answers? How would you connect that?
Yeah, the very first chapter is, knowing what's actually healthy, really spending some time. And Wade, you talk about this too, like shopping the perimeter of the grocery store, right? We want to stay away from those aisles. And I'm Canadian here, and this is nothing against my American friends, but I was really surprised when I started going to the school in the States. So I'm in Canada. I started going to the school in the States and I go to the grocery store. There's like aisles and aisles and aisles of like candy and chocolate things like and drinks, things I have never seen before. And I was like, oh my God, when you're in Canada, there's like one aisle for chips, and they probably put chips and chocolate in the same aisle. But when I go to the US, it's like there's multiple aisles of it. But I was literally like a kid in a candy store when I went down there, because
you were a kid in the candy store.
So, definitely like that's what I would say is like, it was one of the differences. So yeah, knowing what's actually healthy. So, okay, the perimeter is definitely the healthiest place you can be, right? I always say that the best foods for you don't come in shiny packaging. The more claims you see on the outside of that packaging, now with added this and added that, the more that I'm skeptical of that product. So what we really want to do is we want to learn to be like a food detective. We really want to start reading those food labels, and don't just look at how many carbs is in that food. Because I know there's a lot of people out there like, how many carbs is in here? That's not the important thing we need to be looking at here. We need to be looking at that ingredient label. Is there anything on that label that you can't pronounce? Is there anything on that label that has every single letter in the alphabet? Are you seeing red dye number 5? Do you know what that is? If you don't, I'm going to give you a news flash here. Your body doesn't know what that is either. And when your body receives something that it doesn't know what to do with, that creates inflammation in the body, because your body is trying to protect yourself. Just like if you were to get like a splinter in your finger, or you stub your toe and your toe swells up, right? Inflammation is how your body tries to protect itself. So I think that's like the most important thing. And we'll get through this a little bit later when I go through the RISE system. But, one of the other chapters that was a hard chapter for me, right, was called Tame the Sugar Dragon. And it's all about how to, work past, just an addiction to sugar, which I definitely had like all of my life for sure. But managing your sugar addiction, if you are addicted to sugar, is again, really, really important for lots of different reasons, which I'll definitely get into later.
Excellent. I think if sugar was released today, it would actually be scheduled as a drug like cocaine. And
yes,
we all got it early in life. And so it is super addictive. And we have to recognize that we're all addicted to certain levels within the population. And so managing that is really, really important. And getting assistance inside of that is really important. So
definitely.
In your career, who's the typical client that you tend to work with, and what are their struggles and challenges that are common, maybe that our listener might find? The Bioptimizer mission is to help more of the world fix their digestion at a core level. The truth is, your digestion is only as good as your enzyme levels. Imagine trying to build a house with a tree. It's impossible. You need to chop the tree down into small pieces. Similarly, in order for your food to be used by your body, it must be broken down into a bioavailable form. And that's what enzymes do, converting protein into amino acids, fats into specific fatty acids, and carbohydrates into usable energy units. We start out with an abundance of enzymes, and that's why kids can digest just about anything really quickly. The thing is cooking food kills enzymes, as they cannot survive at temperatures above 118 degrees. So years of this ends up depleting our bodies and leads to weak digestion. Taking digestive enzymes like masszymes, which has an incredibly high level of protease for digesting protein, as well as other critical enzymes like lipase, amylase, and others, is a total game changer. Suddenly, you strengthen your digestion, eliminate gas and bloating, boost metabolism, and multiply your energy. Most importantly, you fix your digestion at a core level. To get started with Masszymes and to save 10% on your first order, go to masszymes.com. That's MASSZYMES.com and use the code MASS10, MASS10.
Yeah, what I'm definitely seeing, Wade, is autoimmune conditions. I'm definitely seeing that like on the rise. I'm seeing a lot of women coming to me now for autoimmune conditions. I'm also seeing diabetes and pre-diabetes on the rise. So those are the two groups I've been working on primarily. I would say over the pandemic, I'm seeing a lot more cases of like pre-diabetes and diabetes. But in terms of how they're feeling, like normally these are like high powered women. So these are women that are like either vice presidents or they're directors, like that kind of level in their career. But essentially they're women who are just in high power positions, just working like maybe 12 to 14 hours a day, don't really have a lot of time to think about eating healthier, let alone getting in the kitchen and actually meal prepping anything. Just having a really hard time managing stress. Again, like I mentioned earlier, just feeling completely out of control and like their life is almost unraveling. But, a common theme I'm also seeing with these women is in the boardroom, like they're fierce, they got it going on. But then when it comes to their health, it's just like they're just completely just, unaware and just not really knowing like where to start or what to do or, how to eat healthy more consistently.
What are some simple tips that you find for people living in that high-powered, high corporate kind of environment on, maintaining a healthy lifestyle under that kind of pressure? And I think a lot of people don't understand. We kind of have this public version that there's these corporate people that are just these ruthless savages, just vacuuming up the unsuspecting people of the world. And that's not really the case.
No.
Once you're inside those institutions. So what are some of the things, and many of them are very motivated by very noble causes and noble missions that are misunderstood. But yet these environments, when you do get paid that kind of money and you have to make decisions that not only influence you, but maybe hundreds, if not thousands of workers and concordant customers. And there is pressure to that you have to take because you can't always make everybody happy. What are some of the tips that you've learned for people in those environments?
Boundaries. Number one, for sure. And this is something I even had to learn myself because I am somebody who was like the jack of all trades. I can do all of the things and I can multitask lots of different things. But just because I can do that doesn't necessarily mean that I should do that. So one of the things for me personally was hiring an assistant. Like I was doing a lot of all the things in my business. And then I was like, you know what? It got to a point where it was like, okay, Trudy, you can't be all things to all people. You have to get some help here. And I'm a control freak. So I had a hard time releasing control to my assistant, but I'm so glad that I did because now it allows me to be able to serve people and impact people at a higher level and stick to doing those things that only I can do and then outsourcing the rest of it. Right. So I definitely would say boundaries. And even just like if you're working in like a corporate setting, like some people are back to the office, some people are still working from home. Then we have hybrid situations going on, turning off your notifications. Like maybe you set like certain times during the day where it's just like, there's no notifications coming through because to constantly having like messages pinging and pinging and pinging and pinging and coming through, it's like, there's this thing called context switching. So if you're like working on one task and then all of a sudden, like let's say a Slack message comes in and now you're working on this other task, it takes your brain quite a while to start getting accustomed to working on that other task. So I would definitely say boundaries, trying to finish work at a respectable time. So you have that time for you. So you have that time for your family. And, for people who have a hard time establishing boundaries, what I would say is this, and I learned this from a therapist. I read this article and it was such a great analogy. She said to think about boundaries like guardrails on the road. When you're driving on the road, when you're on the highway, we have those guardrails on the side, right? And then we have the lines that divide the highway. They're there to protect everybody. So you have to think about boundaries in the same way. It's not just there to protect yourself. It's there to protect everybody around you, those that you love. So boundaries are super important. And a morning routine. I swear by my morning routine, before I would just jump right into my day. As soon as I pop my eyes open my laptop, email. And then I said, you know what? No, my husband taught me this. My husband's like a phenomenal motivational speaker, but the importance of a morning routine. Because when we think about when we go through the day is constantly taking from us, taking, right? You're putting out fires, you're solving problems. So that's why the morning is really the best time to give to yourself, to fill your cup, to give you that sense of resilience throughout the day. So my morning routine consists of, I open my eyes and I meditate. I meditate for at least 5 minutes. And after I meditate, I might read a book. And I might read it. I'm not reading like a whole big long chapter of a book. I might just read a book for 5 or 10 minutes just to get some sort of thought or intention for my day, right? So maybe it might just be a few pages. Do whatever you can do. And then I'll exercise. Some days I might have like 45 minutes. Some days I might only have 20 minutes to exercise, but I make the most with the time that I have. And I would say that as well. If somebody's listening to this and saying, I don't have time for a morning routine, my question to you would be, what can you do with the time that you have? Okay. There's probably some areas of your life or your day where you can shave off some time, right? And give that time to yourself. So the morning routine is super important. And I like to exercise in the morning because, you know, and Wade, I talked to you about this earlier. It's not so much about the way that I look. It's about the way that I feel. And exercising just makes me feel stronger. It just makes me feel resilient. When I exercise in the morning, I just feel like I can conquer the day. So I would say definitely those two things, boundaries as well as a morning routine.
What are some of the elements that you see, I would say, that trip people up over the long term? Like how do when they go outside of those boundaries, like how do they, like what happens? Like how does that, like people go, you know, I was right on track. I was reading my way and everything was going good. And then something happened. It's, you know, and then all of a sudden it all went to hell in a handbasket. Like what are some of the things that you've noticed where people kind of hit their zone sweet spot, but then they kind of fall apart or self-sabotage or get lost or, you know, get distracted? What are some of those elements that you've noticed?
Yeah, I would say a couple of things. The first one would be should have, could have, would have thinking, right? Like you said, you're eating healthy, you're doing great, you're doing all the things. And then all of a sudden, maybe you have a bad day and then you find yourself having, you know, 2 glasses of wine. And then you start kicking yourself. I shouldn't have had that wine. I shouldn't have done this. I shouldn't have done that. And you're just all over yourselves, right? You need to just accept that that's happened and just move on. Make the next meal healthier, right? So last night I had a glass of wine, wasn't feeling so great this morning. What did I do this morning? I made sure I had a power-packed green smoothie. I put greens in there. I put greens powder. I put some adaptogens in there. I got my maca. So it's just, you know, forgiving yourself for that incident and then just choosing again, making the next meal healthier. Don't beat yourself up about it. And then there's the black and white thinking, right? It's like, okay, well, I said I wasn't going to have the cookies, but then, oh my God, I gave in and I had 3 cookies. Well, you know, I might as well just eat that hamburger too, or I might as well have the fries too. It's this black and white thinking of thinking, okay, just because I fell off, it's like now it's like the wheels have completely fallen off. And now I'm never going to get back on there because I tried and I failed, right? It's just forgiving yourself for the thought, forgiving yourself for that incident, and then just making that next meal healthier.
That's great information, something that everybody can apply. Now, I'm going to break away from that for a second. And what is your non-negotiables when it comes to someone that's saying, you know what, 20, 30 pounds overweight, I've been struggling with whatever. What do I need to do next? Like, what is the step-by-step action plan that I need to take to get myself back on track or in the boundary rails, if you will?
Yeah, I talked about this earlier, but I would definitely say like getting your thoughts on your side. A lot of us we have thousands of thoughts a day, and most of those thoughts are negative, right? So it's really just understanding that and understanding as well too, like your thoughts are like, they affect chemical messengers in your brain and in your body. And there's some research that's starting to come out now that's showing the link between, stress as well as autoimmune conditions. And a lot of this has to do with our negative thoughts, right? So I definitely say trying to get your thoughts on your side, because when we have a thought, that leads to a certain feeling, which leads to an action. So it's really important that we become more in tune with ourselves and we understand that correlation. And I would also say as well, it's like, we all have our vices in terms of, our foods that we like to eat, that we like enjoying. Like it could be cupcakes, it could be brownies, whatever your thing is. I would say, like, instead of completely depriving yourself of that food, maybe you find a way to make it healthier. Like I love cookies. Like I am a self-professed cookie monster, but I don't buy cookies anymore. I make them in my own kitchen, because when you make them in your kitchen, it's going to be much healthier than anything that you would buy on a shelf. Okay. So I get in the kitchen and I make my cookies. I'll use chickpea flour in my cookies. And even my husband, he ate them. And I was like, is he really going to try these? Is he going to eat them? He tried them. And to my surprise, he loved them. He was like, oh my God, this is chickpea flour. I would never think. He's like, these are actually pretty good. It's not as bad as I thought it was going to taste. So just looking at, some of your favorite unhealthy meals and just finding a way that you can make them healthier. What is something that you can swap out? Maybe try swapping out a different flour. Maybe try swapping out a different type of sugar. Like just trying to find a way to still enjoy your favorite foods without feeling deprived.
Now you talked about environment and the importance of an environment. What do you do when you have people in your environment, i.e. like your boss, for example, that was really causing a problem? How do you handle that? What is your suggestion to people when they have, quote unquote, a toxic environment or an environment that is not supportive of where you're going? Or maybe you're going in a direction and all of a sudden what you want as an environment is different and that's not concordant with the people around you.
Yeah. I would definitely say, again, it all comes down to our mindset, right? And just really working on developing those resiliency skills and just working on your mindset as much as you possibly can, but also being the example, right? So if you have like people in your household, let's say who, you want to eat healthier, but they don't necessarily want to eat healthier, just be the example for them and just start eating healthy, right? They might notice that, hey, you know what? Like she's a little bit more energetic these days, or, she's sleeping a little bit better than she was before. And then when they notice that these changes are happening in you, it's almost like they kind of catch it too. And they want to make those changes in their life as well. So I would definitely say like, be the example instead of trying to force people to kind of get on your side, but definitely like doing whatever you can as well to, manage your mindset, like whether it's reading personal development books, whether it is spending some time meditating, whether it is spending some time, in nature and just walking, do whatever you can to develop your mindset and realize that at times, when people are being negative towards you, a lot of times it says a lot more about them than it does about you, especially when you're starting to eat healthier. It's almost like you're holding up a mirror for them because they're seeing some of the things that they probably should be doing, but they're not ready to do it. And when you're doing it and you're walking that path, it makes them feel a little bit uncomfortable.
Indeed, we see that all the time. And then what are some of your favorite maybe healthy meals, and what are some of your go-to nutritional supplements or hacks?
Favorite healthy go-to meals. Let's see. Oh my God, there's so many of them.
Well, you don't have to limit it to one.
I know. I would say like when I'm in a hurry and when I'm pressed for time, I might do like a baked sweet potato. Like if I know I'm like having like I look at my week ahead, I know I'm going to have a hectic week. I might just pop some sweet potatoes in the oven. And then the next day I'll just, cut it open. I'll put some black beans in there, maybe just put some fajita veggies. I'll just make like a little fajita veggie mix with like some onions, some bell peppers, maybe some mushrooms. Put that in my sweet potato along with my black beans, maybe, throw some salsa on top, some avocado, and it's a delicious, healthy meal. Like we don't have to like follow these big, long, complicated recipes with 28 different ingredients to eat healthier. Just think about like creating like parts of meals, like the sweet potato. I just made like a quick little veggie mix, which I could probably repurpose and maybe use in salads or stir fries, right? So just thinking about like building like little components, like that's how I keep on track with eating healthier rather than following like a big long list of recipes. One of my other favorite go-tos, I would say, is my salted caramel chickpea flour blondies. And I know that's a mouthful in more ways than one, but yeah, like I use chickpea flour and make like a date caramel with it. It's so easy. Just like a few ingredients like dates, coconut milk, like some sea salt, make a nice date caramel, drizzle that over, like, yeah, so good. Like I want them right now. I'm talking about this and I want them right now. So I would say like those are kind of the two things. In terms of supplements that I like, I'm huge with adaptogens, which helps with managing stress. And so I'll talk about what adaptogens are first before I go into the ones I like. But adaptogens are like plants or herbs that help your body to adapt to, hence the name adaptogens, adapt to and respond to stress. So there's things like maca, shaga, ginseng. Those are just, some to name a few, ashwagandha. And in fact, those are all the ones that I have on a regular basis. I always have ashwagandha tea pretty much every single day. Like that is like my afternoon tea to kind of like help to soothe my nerves. I might do like a shaga latte where I'll do like, some shaga in there. I'll do some raw cacao powder, put a little bit of almond butter, some cinnamon, So good. Maca, I'll throw maca in my smoothies in the morning. That's probably the easiest way to enjoy maca. So I would say those are probably my favorite type of supplements.
Yeah, I think that adaptogens are phenomenal, and
Yeah.
I use them virtually every day. And almost everyone I know in the health industry has their kind of adaptogenic stacks that they use for various situations. We're going to wrap this up. Where can people find out more about you, your coaching? Where can they get their book, follow you on Instagram? You're such a great communicator, and you're coming from such a great perspective from the corporate community, and now a nutritionist that's helping people manage the stress in their life. Where can they find you and find out more and get all this information?
Thanks so much for saying that, Wade. First of all, you can find me at trudyestone.com. That's my website. And on social media, you can find me on Instagram, Trudy E. Stone, also Facebook, Trudy E. Stone, LinkedIn. I'm not quite sure what that is, but if you just go on LinkedIn and type in Trudy Stone, I think I'm the only one. So that's where you can find me. I also have a free masterclass called When Food is Comfort. And it is all about how to finally overcome overeating. So if you ask yourselves questions like, why don't I have more willpower to eat healthier? If you find yourself constantly turning to food to soothe your emotions or manage stress, you will love this workshop, because I'm going to give you a step-by-step framework that you can use to finally overcome overeating and stop turning to food for comfort.
And where do we get access to that course?
So you can find that at comfort.trudyestone.com.
All right, we'll put all of this in the show notes for everyone. Trudy, you are awesome. I really enjoyed our conversation. You're so clear, concise, and you have such good information. It's a pleasure to have you on our show. And for our listeners, make sure you check out Trudy's masterclass course. And of course, follow her on Instagram, Facebook. The links are in the show notes. I want to thank you all for joining us today on the Awesome Health Podcast. I'm Wade T. Lightheart. Live your best life. Stay awesome. See you next episode. Take care.
And now for a Bioptimizers fixed digestion tip: how to get away with eating sugar. Hey, look, sugar is normally one of the worst things for you. But let's be honest. I mean, we all cheat from time to time. And here's a little trick that will ensure your body benefits from the sugar. Now, before you eat or drink anything sweet, take 5 to 8 capsules of P3OM. The patented strain in the formula devours sugar so fast, it literally doubles in the body every 20 minutes in the presence of sugar. That doesn't mean that you can or you should eat a bunch of sugar or sit around all day doing that. But on the days that you do cheat, or you go after one of those maybe meals that you wouldn't normally do, this ensures that you get something in your gut that eats the sugar. And it's not going to feed the bad guys or spike your blood glucose nearly as much. So to learn more about P3OM and its sugar-devouring and protein-digesting properties and how it can transform your gut and metabolism, go to www.bioptimizers.com.
Thank you for listening to the Bioptimizers Awesome Health Podcast. You can find more information at bioptimizers.com.